Jack Kennedy liked, Tennessee Williams, and Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
I mention all four of us because we're more or less contemporaries, and we were both promiscuous to a degree that is not possible in the age of AIDS, but we certainly were. It may have been the tension of the war, I don't know what. So neither one of us was looking for completeness. We were looking for the excitement and the adventure. The example of my own family put me totally against marriage. My mother was an alcoholic, and I couldn't wait to get out of her company. And except for one episode where I nearly got married, I was never again tempted. So that ruled that out.
What was that episode?
Well, that was just before I was going overseas, and we all thought we were going to be killed. Indeed, in my case, Jimmy was killed. And there was suddenly a great urge, which I suppose is biological, to procreate before you leave. But a lot of things went wrong, and that did not take place.
I mean, you take note of homosexual and heterosexual.
Well, there
more of the former than the latter, but relationships with women as lovers.
Well, I don't make any labels for anybody. There's no such thing as a homosexual person, no such thing as a heterosexual person. Technically, I suppose we're all bisexual. But these are adjectives, not nouns. They describe actions. Yes, there's a homosexual action, and some people like to commit them all the time. There are heterosexual actions, and people sometimes are exclusively that, sometimes not. There is no such thing as a person. It's like saying because you like to eat potatoes and I'm on brown rice. Hey, I went to meet Charlie Rose. He's a friend of mine. He's a potato guy, you know, potato guy. I'm brown rice myself. And I've got a very good doctor who can get you off those potatoes, you know, if you were ever serious about it.
Or they would say, this is Charlie Rose, he's a potato eater, and I mean, he's a potato eater, and I'm...
Yes, and I'm rice.
But here is Howard Oster, here in this photograph, who still lives with you in Ravello.
Yes.
No, I'm interested in relationships here.
I gather you're interested in relationships here.
Well, but the point is that you write about this.
Yes, I do.
You know, there's no sex here, but this is something else. This is a companionship. This is what?
Well, I think if I have any lessons for the troops, never mix friendship and sex. I have sometimes made a friend of someone I've had sex with, but very, very seldom. I never have sex with friends. I think one of the things in the world of the young marrieds, which is so disastrous and leads to 50% of them getting divorced, is they go to bed with each other's husbands and wives. They go to bed with people they know. They make terrible messes because there are children involved. It's all right if it's just a twosome, a threesome, a foursome. I think that's unfair to families, and I much prefer the more direct way that you have your sex here, and you have your friendships here. Elaine Dundee, marvelous novelist, is very funny about that. In the book, she wrote The Dud Avocado, and about how, although, well, Dawn Powell would always say, when somebody's such a marvelous novelist, great wit, and she used to say, I've only been to bed with perhaps 20 men in my life. Well, we were counting up once, and we got to about 50, and she said, I do not count the times that I was betrayed by alcohol.
You say that your passion is mostly for reading other people's books and creating sentences for yourself.
That's it.
That's what you want to do.
And that is what I did do.
Do you share the opinion of most people about what is your best work? I mean, they talk about Lincoln, they talk about Myra Breckinridge, they talk about the first
well, I don't
that was so
think,
controversial.
I don't think much about I don't rate myself very much.
But you know what you like. I mean, do you like them all equally, or do you recognize that sometimes you do better, or you strike a chord
well,
that
sometimes you have more
more
fun with something. I mean, a book like Duluth or Myra Breckinridge, it's the ones that make me laugh I like the best, and the ones that are pure invention. Historical novels are like breaking rock. I mean, that involves scholarship. And you've got to get it right, or as right as you can. And I call those reflections. I am reflecting upon the origins of Christianity as through the eyes of the Emperor Julian the Apostate, or in the 5th century BC creation, where I meditate upon Confucius, the Buddha, Socrates, and Zoroaster. I'm teaching myself, and I hope that I'm being instructive and useful to others. It's worthwhile doing. It's hard work. It's very hard work. And I don't think I could probably ever do anything like that again. And I get going with the Meyer Breckinridge. I am Meyer Breckinridge, whom no man shall possess. This voice came booming to me. I don't know where it came from. And I was off and running, and it wasn't until I was halfway through the book I realized that she'd been a man. This is the fun of writing.
You didn't know until you were halfway there?
Halfway through. But her voice was all wrong, you know. And then I suddenly realized, oh, this is somebody with a sex change.
And who played in the movie? Was it Raquel Welch?
Raquel, yes. Who, if they'd had a director, you know, she might have done it. Very good job, but it was sabotage, alas, from the beginning.
Do you think that what you have achieved as a literary figure, as a writer, is primarily the force of your intellect or the force of your energy?
Well, energy without which there is nothing. So I am genetically very sound. I come from an energetic family. I came from a family that refused ever to, the main line of it, at least those that I admired in the family, to accept defeat. My grandfather was blind at the age of 10. And he had vowed he was going to go to the Senate, which was an important place in those days. And he got there at the age of 38, not being able to read.
And you would read to him?
And I read to him as a kid and was brought up in his house. And I never ever felt sorry for myself because I would think of him. You know, I had two eyes at least. So I had these examples in front of me of people who had overcome quite a lot. So I was, that combined with energy will get you quite a ways. Beyond that, you have to deal sort of with what most excites you. And I was really, they did a retrospective yesterday at the Museum of Broadcasting and Television, whatever it's called. And I was watching some of my old television plays, yeah. And what do they call? One is called a sense of justice. Nobody would call anything that today. Who has a sense of justice today? Certainly not the Supreme Court. Another one is called honor. Civil War story. Who on earth would go on about honor? And here I was in my late 20s, early 30s, obsessed with these themes. Justice, honor. What is the state? What rights has the state against the individual? What rights does the individual have against the state? And I don't know, maybe it's being brought up in the house of a populist politician, but I knew where I stood very early, and I knew what I cared about, and I knew that no one was going to shut me up, not even the New York Times. And
It's wicked.
I never took no for an answer.
Yeah. Well, you never took no, and you continued. Have you achieved what you, I mean, how far along are you to achieving what you wanted to do and creating what you wanted to create and doing what you wanted to do in this life at 70?
Well, I suppose I would like earlier to have been president, but now I see that I know too much about it now. It's a pointless job. We talk about the coming election. Nobody basically cares about it because everybody knows the country isn't, nothing works. The system doesn't work, so the individual doesn't matter. Had I been president about the time one of my numerous political cousins, Jimmy Carter, was the president, something might have been done in the world. But by then, everything was blocked, blocked, blocked. So that ambition sputtered out long ago. I thought it was better to reflect upon the presidency and books like Empire and Hollywood and Burr, Lincoln. So as for the work itself, you do your best.
What are you proudest of? The novels, the essays, the what?
I don't know that I'm really proud of anything.
You don't know that you're really proud of anything? I mean,
well, no, you never do it as well as you ought to do it. I think that in my lifetime I have made people look at sex and at the American Republic in new ways that they would not have looked at these two great subjects had I not been around. I have changed, every now and then, I have changed the discourse. I said it, just one silly example, 1968, the conversations with William Buckley on television, the conventions. Very first debate we had, 1968, Republican convention, Miami Beach. I said there is no difference between the two parties. Each is paid by the same people, paid for. Explosion, how can you say such a thing? Hysteria on every side.
On every side, or you mean by Bill?
Oh, Bill, I mean, hysteria. Hysteria is at home, always there, but I'm speaking more of what goes on.
You mean it
All across the
ricocheted off
country.
the country of people saying,
How
who
dare
is
he
this?
say? There's all the
Who
difference
is
in the
this
world.
writer saying that American
Yeah,
presidents are for sale and owned by corporate America?
Yeah, and they said, you know, the party of labor, the Democrats, the party of the rich, the Republicans. There is not one single major politician today who does not repeat what I said in '68. That there is fundamentally no difference between the two parties.
No,
So much
true.
so, the Republicans are breaking up. They know that, so they have their Gingrich and the Christian right. They have their little splinter.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is that now, there's just a story in the New York Times, which you admire so much,
Very much, yes.
about President Clinton and the success that his campaign is having in the last 6 months is because he's co-opting Republican positions and moving to the center.
Well, he's a perfectly good politician, but they are committing seppuku, I believe is the correct
Japanese.
Yeah, they're committing suicide. I mean, that there is no party there.
What's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, let me think. I'm trying to do a movie about the Alder Hiss case, Whittaker Chambers.
New information suggests Chambers.
Chambers was indeed working for the Russians. I think that was accepted.
No. That Hiss was working for the Russians.
Well,
Not that Chambers was working.
The newest I haven't seen,
Okay.
but next, the penultimate newest
Yeah.
was indeed when that general in Moscow said, well, we can't find him in the files.
Right.
But we know if their files are as big a mess as Langley's files, they may never find anything. But I always thought it's sort of unlikely, but I leave it open. I mean, the case was never solved. But I want to bring in, if it can be done, the gods on Olympus. I want Harry Truman in there and Dean Acheson cooking up, restoring the draft, militarizing the economy, instituting loyalty oaths, having the draft in peacetime, something that never happened before. This was very bold. This was revolutionary. And my friend David McCullough, great man, wonderful writer, does a biography of Harry Truman and misses the entire point to his political career.
Which was?
The Cold War. He institutionalized it. He put it into place. And Jack Kennedy fell for it. He believed in it. He wanted to win it. Now, at least Truman was cynical. And Acheson was fairly cynical. Jack was a kind of a believer. We'll bear any burden and so forth and so on. And he was going to do that. Well, that meant war. And war would be a very bad thing for the world. And he gives us the missile crisis, which is a moment in which we could have all gone up.
Jack gave us the missile crisis. I mean, I think Mr. de Brennan suggested on this program that Khrushchev gave us the missile crisis by putting the missiles
By putting them in, yes.
Cuba.
But then Jack's response to it was they were ready to go to. I have in there in the book. I made notes about when the Berlin Wall went up. I was at Hyannisport, staying at the compound, near the compound, going every day to have meals, and we were really on the verge of war over Berlin. And Jack was very, I must say he was schizophrenic. I mean, at one moment he said, I'm a peace at any price guy. And the next moment he's talking about war, nuclear war. And Jackie was in a rage about it. She didn't quite say, you know, you goddamn men, but that is what she meant. You don't seem to care. The children are going to die too. And she really got impassioned over this. And then you duck with that, you know, it's not that bad, you know, kind of thing. But I have in this book, I made 13 single-spaced notes of what we talked about every day, and it make your hair stand on end.
Gore Vidal, a memoir, Palimpsest. Thank you. Pleasure. We'll be right back. Stay with us.